Today it's time to show you how I make aluminum panels for my rock crawlers and rock racers. Stay tuned, find out how. I decided to go ahead and make some aluminum panels for my 1.9 Wraith. A lot of you guys had recommended me do kind of like a how-to video on how I make my panels. Now, I'm definitely not an expert at this, but I've built them a few times now. So let me give you some of my tips and tricks on making your own aluminum panels for your rock racer or rock crawler. As far as material that I'll be using, this is just stuff I picked up at Home Depot. I'm sure you can find it online a little bit cheaper. This was about 13 bucks for a 6 by 18 inch sheet, and this is 0.025 thickness aluminum. This is just basic sheet metal you find in their hardware section. Some of the items you'll need to actually make your aluminum panels. You will need a good place to cut some templates out on. I just have an old kind of work mat here designed for cutting out different materials. You will need a good sharp hobby knife, a tape measure to make some rough estimates, a good straight edge just for making precise straight cuts, pens and markers for making those marks on where you need to cut, some good tin snips. I have some angled ones here, which is good for making longer cuts, or you can use a Dremel with a cutoff wheel like this one. Finally, a good sharp file and a drill and drill bit to cut all of the holes so you can mount up your panels. Now, the first thing I like to do is actually make a template of what I'm making the aluminum panels out of. So as you can see right here, I do want to make this kind of angle right here across the side here and just slightly angled back. And that's going to be the first panel I'll cut out using just a template first out of some cardboard, and then we'll transfer that to the aluminum panels and cut it out once, measure twice. Making the templates, I use these kind of cheap Christmas box material. I've also found that like USPS boxes are great for that. They're priority boxes. You can just grab those free at the post office, use those. But this stuff is pretty thin. It cuts easy with a sharp hobby knife, and you can use it nice for templates. Now, the first thing you want to do is do a rough estimate of how big the panel needs to be. Now, right here, I'm going to overestimate, and I'm going to say it's going to need to be about 8 inches by about 3 inches. Now I've went ahead and squared up these two corners of this cardboard right here, and we're going to go ahead and cut out that 8 inch by 3 inch piece. And there we have it. We have the first panel just rough cut out, ready to fit on. Now that we have the rough cut panel, you can go ahead and fit it on here and just get some estimate of kind of how big this thing really is. And I can feel underneath here as far as it is definitely too long. So I'm going to go ahead and start trimming off a little bit at a time and see where I need to end this up at. Now that I got the height of the panel exactly perfect, I can feel right up here on my fingers, it's like right rolled over like the first third of the bar as well as the bottom down here. So it has a good feeling, and it won't actually hit your fingers or cut you or anything when the panel is actually mounted on. Now we need to go ahead and cut up these angles. We can see we have one angle right here and also one angle right here, and we're just going to guesstimate on these angles. Now, one thing you can do is go ahead and flip the panel down. Go ahead and take your pen and kind of mark at exactly where you need to make it, and go ahead and do some estimates on those angles with your straight edge. Now with those guesstimates, I have one mark right here, one mark right here, and that's for this angle. And then of course I'm going to have this one right at the point up here and going to this angle right here. I don't want to cut exactly that size yet. I want to kind of get to that point and just keep shaving a little bit off at a time until I find the perfect fit for this panel. So I got those two angles cut. Now I'm going to go ahead and mock this thing up and see how it fits. Now just judging right now, it looks like the back one is perfect. So the back angle looks pretty good here. This one you can kind of see that I don't have the angle right. So what I'm going to do now is go ahead and start taking off a little bit more towards the bottom and just keep that straight edge up here on the top. Now with just a few fine-tuning cuts, I was able to get this shape right here. And if we match this up, this looks absolutely perfect now. So I'm a little bit over on that side, back looks perfect. I think this is a keeper. Now the best thing about doing side panels is not only will this work for the driver's side, we can flip it over. It can work on the passenger side as well, just by flip-flopping it. Now I went ahead and grabbed my panel right here, and the best thing you want to do with the panels is try and have the least amount of waste. So I'm going to go ahead and take this panel right here, or this template, mock it up to this side, and I do want to use the actual laser cut side for the top piece right here, just so when your hands are going in, you're not going to get cut. These panels do get very sharp, especially if you don't file them down and really sand them down to a good end. So right here I have this thing matched up, and I'm going to go ahead and just take a ballpoint pen and start tracing around the template. And there we have it. We have a perfectly marked up panel. Now it's time to cut. So a quick note on how you actually cut these things. So if you're going to use tin snips like these whisk cutters right here, it will leave the ends of your actual aluminum with kind of like a jagged or a patterned edge. Sometimes it'll actually loop over to the other side. You can kind of see here how it kind of angles. That all can be bent back and then of course shaved down with the file at the end. Now if you are going to use the cutoff wheel, it does give a cleaner cut. It does take a lot more effort to make these cuts, and it takes a lot longer to actually make them. So definitely wear eye protection if you do that. And I always mounted my aluminum panels onto like a wood board, but also keep in mind the wood will start heating up and almost catch on fire. It'll smell like burning wood, so be aware of that. But it will leave a cleaner edge right here, but it'll actually throw everything to the other side. So this is super jagged on this side, and you do still have to knock it down with a file. All right, so let's get cutting here. And there we have it, our first panel's cut out. Now that the panel has been rough cut out, it's time to just kind of clean up some of the edges. Right here you can kind of see like a little dimple here from when I was cutting at weird angles. And of course you can see the jagged edges. Some of the corners are just turned up. This one's kind of turned back. But a couple ways that I like to trim up the panels is I have these just needle nose pliers, but they have a super flat section right here, but also a grippy section up here. You don't want to use the top part, you want to use the bottom part, or any pliers that are pretty much flat, and just kind of flatten out these sections just by crimping down on them. And it just takes out any imperfections that might have been in the cut. All right, now that we have 90% of that done, we want to go ahead and take our file and just start knocking off the edges. And then one last thing I like to do, all of these sharp corners right here, I just go ahead and round them off with just the file. And there we go. We're about ready to mount this thing up. All right, now that we have the panel cut out, it's time to actually mount it. Now you may ask yourself, but there's no holes here, but there's holes here. How the hell are we gonna do that? Well, I have a very non-typical way of doing that. Now, I guess we could take the actual template, stick that up here and kind of poke through to get the actual holes. I do it a little bit off-kiltered where I actually take the original mounting screws, I go ahead and mount those all in to their existing holes. Now that I have all 5 of those screws mounted in, I'm going to go ahead and take some black grease. Yes, just kind of run-of-the-mill black grease that you get most of your kits. You just need to be a color though. You can't use clear stuff or anything that's kind of like opaque. And we just want to go ahead and dab just a little bit on each screw head. Now, part of one of the most nerve-wracking parts of this whole deal is actually lining this thing up and just dabbing it onto that black grease to get all of your hole marks on the back side of this thing. So best thing to do, measure twice, measure 3 times actually, and then go ahead and dab it on there. And I like to keep my fingers on either side of the top here and also the bottom just to get everything all lined up. And there we have it. There's all of your screw holes marked on there, ready to go ahead and drill those holes in. Alright, so I have all of the holes cut. I do like to make the holes just a little bit bigger than normal, so a little bit bigger than a 3mm screw, and that way they're able just to go straight in and you have a little bit of wiggle room if you didn't quite get the holes right. So I'm going to go ahead and mount this up and we'll see the final product here at the end. And there you have it, some aluminum panels for your rock racer or rock crawler. Now these are pretty easy to make once you get some of the learning curve out of the way. So obviously this panel, the other panel, once you get up to the roof and the hood, everything will be smooth sailing here. And the best thing that I can offer as advice is just take your time, measure twice, and cut once. Well guys, that's a quick look at how I make my aluminum panels for my rock racers and rock crawlers. I can't wait to get this thing all completely buttoned up and show you how my 1.9 Wraith really looks in the end. If you haven't already done so, give this video a like, it gets it out to more people. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so, and hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time I upload a video. And finally, my name is Rich. Thanks for watching.